Episode 1, The Stranger in the Dark. Rain slicked the cracked pavement of Duskwood's only main road, the lamplight blurring into golden halos. Elena Ward clutched her grocery bags as she hurried home, her 5-year-old son Ethan skipping a few feet ahead, oblivious to the oncoming storm, and the car speeding toward the crosswalk. "Ethan, wait," she shouted. Time fractured. A scream tore from her throat as headlights bore down on him. But before her legs could move, a dark blur swept in from the shadows. The car screeched. Groceries fell. When she blinked, Ethan was no longer in the street, he was in the arms of a stranger. He stood tall and motionless beneath the flickering lamplight, his long coat clinging to his frame. Wet strands of black hair clung to his sharp cheekbones, and his eyes, God, his eyes, gleamed an unnatural silver for the briefest moment before dimming. "Is he all right?" the man asked in a voice smooth as velvet but unnervingly cold. Elena stumbled forward, her heart hammering. Ethan whimpered but nodded, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I didn't see the car, Mommy." She glanced at the man, then the road. No one could have moved that fast, not even close. "How did you?" But the stranger was already backing into the shadows. "Be careful crossing. Especially in this town," he murmured, then disappeared down the alley behind the old bookstore. The next morning, rumors buzzed through Duskwood like hornets. A new tenant had moved into the abandoned Thorn estate on the hill, the mansion no one had lived in for over 50 years. Elena tried to ignore the whispers of devil worship and dead animals, of windows that lit up with no electricity. She had more important things to worry about: rent, her double shift at the diner, Ethan's cough. But at night, as she lay in bed with Ethan curled beside her, her thoughts returned to the man in the street. His voice still echoed in her mind. And sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she saw the gleam of silver staring back from the dark. Episode 2, Whispers of the Hill House. The air in Duskwood was different now, thicker, like something ancient had stirred beneath the soil. At the diner, whispers brewed stronger than the coffee. Old Mrs. 𝐃𝐿 muttered about the dead cat found outside her porch, throat torn open with surgical precision. Teenagers dared each other to approach the Thorn estate gates at night, returning pale and breathless, swearing they heard music playing inside, violin notes drifting on the wind despite the broken windows and years of silence. Elena tried not to listen. Between double shifts and Ethan's growing nightmares, he kept mumbling about a man with silver eyes standing at his window. She barely had time to breathe. But something gnawed at her, the way Lucienne had vanished that night without a word, the way Ethan's heart slowed to a calm, almost unnatural rhythm when she asked about him. "Did he say anything to you?" she asked one night, tucking him in. Ethan hesitated. "He smelled like winter." She froze. "What does that mean?" "I don't know. Cold but safe." At dusk the next day, Elena walked the long road to the outskirts of town, drawn by something she couldn't name. The Thorn estate loomed ahead, wrapped in ivy and rot. Its iron gate stood slightly ajar. No birds sang here. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. From the hill, she could see the town stretched below like a toy village, tiny, insignificant. And then, as she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of him on the second-floor balcony. Lucienne stood perfectly still, watching her. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. But she felt it, like a tether forming between them, unseen but impossible to ignore. Later that night, Elena overheard two drunk regulars at the diner. "Did you hear about Greg from the scrapyard? Found him in his truck. White as chalk. No blood in him. Vampires, I'm telling you. That house is cursed." Elena's hand tightened around her coffee pot. Logic told her to laugh it off, to dismiss it all as backwater nonsense. But her gut whispered something else. She had seen his eyes. And she remembered, his touch had made her heart stop pounding. Just for a moment. Episode 3, Heartbeat at Midnight. The rain returned like a memory that wouldn't fade, soaking the streets of Duskwood in silver sorrow. Elena stood at the back door of the diner, her apron still stained with the day's chaos, a cigarette she wouldn't light trembling between her fingers. She hadn't smoked in years, but tonight, the silence felt too heavy. That's when she felt it again. The air shifted. The world seemed to still. And he was there. Lucienne. He didn't emerge so much as materialize, like the fog parted for him. He leaned against the alley wall, arms crossed, gaze unreadable. "You've been watching me," Elena said, more accusation than question. He didn't deny it. "I needed to make sure you were safe." She laughed, sharp, nervous. "Safe? From what?" Lucienne stepped closer, slow and deliberate. His presence was magnetic, impossible to look away from. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me." He hesitated for the first time. A flicker of something, pain? Regret? Crossed his face. Then he looked down, as if ashamed. "There was a time," he said softly, "when I could feel my heartbeat like anyone else. Fast when afraid. Slow when calm. Racing when in love." Elena blinked. The sound of rain softened. "And now?" "It hasn't beaten in over 3 centuries." He stepped close enough that she could smell the storm clinging to his coat. "Until the night I touched you." Her breath caught. She wanted to laugh. To run. To scream. But all she could do was whisper, "That's not possible." "I didn't think so either," he replied. But it happened. Before she could respond, a cold gust swept through the alley, and with it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. Lucienne's head snapped toward the rooftops. "We're not alone," he murmured. Elena turned, but saw only shadows. Yet a chill clung to her spine like ice on skin. Lucienne backed away, eyes scanning the dark. "Go home. Stay inside. Lock every door." And just like that, he vanished into the mist. Elena stood trembling, heart pounding in her chest, until a single thought stopped her cold. What if hers wasn't the only heart beating for the first time in centuries? Episode 4, Blood Ties. The attic smelled of dust, old pine, and forgotten memories. Elena hadn't meant to go searching. She was only looking for Ethan's old winter coats when a loose floorboard snagged her foot. Underneath lay a box she didn't recognize, an old wooden chest, etched with strange markings she didn't recall ever seeing before. Curiosity overrode hesitation. She pried it open. Inside, Ethan's baby clothes, a dried lavender sachet, hospital wristbands. And something folded beneath a pale blue blanket. A letter. Yellowed with age. The envelope was sealed with wax, no stamp, no return address. Just one word written in dark ink, Elena. Her hands shook as she broke the seal. "If you're reading this, it means I've already failed. You've kept him hidden, and that's good. But it won't be enough for long. He's not like us. Not like me. Not like you. He's something older. They'll come for him when they sense it. They always do. Protect him. And don't trust anyone who says they're one of us." "See." Elena sat down hard on the floor. "See. Calder. Ethan's father." She hadn't heard his name in over 5 years. He'd disappeared just after Ethan was born, no goodbye, no trace. She told herself he was dead. She needed to believe it. But this letter was dated 2 weeks after his supposed death. The symbols on the chest suddenly seemed deliberate. Warning marks? Ancient writing? She couldn't be sure. But the more she stared, the more they made her skin prickle. That night, after Ethan had fallen asleep, she sat on her porch, clutching the letter, watching the stars disappear behind creeping clouds. Her world was fraying at the edges. Lucienne. The glow in his eyes. The shadows that seemed to move. And now this. She heard footsteps. Her breath caught. Lucienne stood at the edge of her yard, watching, distant, but not threatening. He looked at her like he already knew what she'd found. "Elena," he said, voice low, almost tender. "We need to talk." She didn't move. Didn't breathe. Because somewhere deep inside, she already knew. Ethan's blood wasn't just rare. It was dangerous. Episode 5, The Covenant Awakes. Night came early in Duskwood that week. Too early. The shadows stretched longer than they should. The wind carried whispers that weren't just wind. And somewhere, beneath the cracked gravestones of a forgotten cemetery on the edge of town, something ancient stirred. Elena tried to stay busy, laundry, dishes, keeping Ethan inside. But every time she turned, she swore she saw movement in the trees. Lucienne hadn't returned since the night he told her the impossible truth. And though part of her hoped he was gone, the rest of her ached with something she didn't have a name for. Then the killings began. 2 hikers were found at the base of Crow's Peak, their bodies completely drained, skin as white as snow. The sheriff blamed animal attacks. Locals whispered vampires. Elena didn't dare whisper anything, especially after she spotted a tall, pale man watching her from across the school parking lot. His irises a deep crimson, his smile too still to be human. Lucienne appeared that night. This time, he didn't knock. He was simply inside her kitchen when she turned around, as if the shadows had opened and let him through. "They've come," he said, voice graver than she'd ever heard. "The Covenant has awakened." "The what?" "A rogue vampire coven. Exiles. They feed without discretion. Without law." His eyes flicked toward Ethan's bedroom. "They've caught his scent." Elena gripped the counter. "He's just a child." Lucienne's silence was her answer. Then came another knock, this one real. She opened the door to find a man with shoulder-length dark hair, eyes like fading embers, and a smile that didn't quite reach his lips. He wore a tailored coat, elegant gloves, and an amulet Elena swore glowed faintly beneath his collar. "Hello, sister-in-law," he said casually. "Miss me?" Lucienne moved between them in an instant, tension rolling off him like heat. "Ambrose," he said, his voice sharp enough to cut stone. "Still brooding after all these years, little brother? Don't worry. I'm not here to fight." Ambrose's smile widened. "Not yet." He turned to Elena. "You're in over your head. And unfortunately for you, so is your son." Lucienne shoved him out the door, but not before Ambrose whispered something only Elena could hear. "Your child carries more than blood. He carries prophecy." Then he was gone, vanishing into the night like smoke. Lucienne looked at her, jaw clenched. "You need to decide right now if you want the truth. All of it. Because once you know, there's no going back." Elena stared at him, heart racing, hands trembling, and somewhere above them, thunder rumbled across the sky like a warning from the gods. "I want it," she said. "No more secrets." Episode 6, Buried in Ash. Lucienne had never told anyone about her, not even Ambrose. But tonight, with Elena staring at him across the flickering candlelight of her kitchen, demanding the truth, the past clawed its way to the surface like a ghost risen from the grave. They sat in silence, Ethan asleep upstairs. Rain tapped the windows in slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat buried beneath centuries of silence. Lucienne closed his eyes. Her name was Isadora. Elena said nothing, sensing that whatever he was about to reveal had been locked inside him for far too long. Flashback, France, 1663. Isadora was fire in human form, red curls wild, green eyes sharp with wit and defiance. She'd been accused of witchcraft for healing a sick child with herbs. Lucienne, still mortal then, had fallen in love with her under the cloak of night, their meetings a dance of stolen moments and whispered dreams. But love made men foolish. He failed to hide her well enough. One morning, the mob came with pitchforks and fire. They burned her alive in the village square. Lucienne had arrived too late to stop it, but just in time to hear her final, ragged whisper over the crackle of flames. "I'll find you again. When your heart remembers how to beat." That night, Lucienne welcomed death, but death never came. Ambrose found him in his grief and turned him instead, binding him to eternity with a thirst he didn't yet understand. Back in the present, Lucienne's voice trembled for the first time Elena had ever heard. "She died screaming my name. And then, I became something she would have feared." Elena blinked, tears stinging her eyes. "And now you think I'm her?" "I don't know what I think," he admitted. "But the night I touched your hand. For a moment, my chest ached. Like something woke up." Elena leaned forward, drawn to him, and for the first time, reached out, not in fear, but understanding. Her hand found his, and his skin, always cool, felt warmer than it should have. "You said Isadora whispered she'd find you when your heart beat again?" Elena asked quietly. Lucienne nodded. "Then maybe she did." But neither of them noticed the shape watching from the trees across the street. Crimson eyes narrowed. Lips curled. And a voice whispered to the wind, "History is so easy to burn again." Episode 7, The Feeding Grounds. The call came just after midnight. Elena answered the phone, her voice heavy with sleep. It was Molly, her coworker at the diner, panicked, sobbing. "They found bodies, Elena. At the Rusted Antler. 6 of them. And there was no blood." Elena's heart dropped. She hung up and turned toward Ethan's room. He was safe, tucked under layers of blankets, his breathing even. But a deep unease crept over her like frost. The Rusted Antler wasn't just any dive bar. It was known for late-night fights, shady locals, and the kind of people who didn't ask questions. The perfect feeding ground. If you weren't human. By the time she reached the edge of the crime scene, yellow tape stretched across the cracked brick walls, and sheriff's deputies muttered to one another with pale faces and shaking hands. That's when she saw him, Lucienne. Standing beneath a broken streetlight, soaked in rain, staring at the alley behind the bar. Elena approached. "Tell me it wasn't you." He didn't flinch. "No. But you knew this would happen. I warned you. The Covenant feeds on chaos. And now they're marking territory." She followed his eyes to the alley, 6 bloodless corpses laid out like offerings. "But you've killed," she whispered. "I've seen you move like them. Faster than light." Lucienne's jaw clenched. "I've taken blood. I won't lie. But I haven't killed in over a century." "Then how do you survive?" A silence stretched between them. Then, suddenly, He turned and disappeared into the shadows of the alley. She followed, hesitating only once before stepping into the dark. What she saw stopped her breath. A man, barely alive, slumped against the wall. Lucienne leaned over him, whispering something. Then, with inhuman grace, Lucienne bit into his wrist and pressed it to the man's mouth. The blood was offered, not taken. Moments later, the man gasped, and opened his eyes. Alive. Stronger. Lucienne stood and faced her. I feed only when there's consent. And when I give, I heal. I am not like them. Elena backed against the wall, breath ragged. But I still saw you. That night in the woods. Your fangs. He stepped closer. Yes. And you didn't run. His voice lowered to a whisper. You weren't afraid. I was, she said. I still am. He was inches from her now, eyes smoldering. And yet you're still here. The tension between them snapped like a taut wire. His hand brushed her cheek, cool, trembling. Her heart thundered in her chest, and she hated how much she wanted the danger of him. Then, from above, a screech cut through the air, unholy, furious. Lucienne's head snapped up. They're watching us. He grabbed her wrist. They'll come for Ethan soon. We have to be ready. But as they disappeared into the night, Elena realized something terrifying. She wasn't just afraid of the monsters outside. She was afraid of how safe she felt with one of them. Episode 8, A Father Returns. The storm rolled in without warning. Wind howled against the windows, and the lights in Elena's house flickered as if nature itself was holding its breath. She locked every door and kept Ethan close, her mind spinning with Lucienne's warning, the Covenant feeds on chaos. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate raps at the front door. Elena clutched the fire poker from beside the fireplace and opened it just enough to see him. Soaked. Silent. Familiar. Elena, he breathed, voice gravel and regret. It's me. Her body went cold. Her fingers loosened. The fire poker clattered to the ground. Calder? He looked exactly as she remembered, and yet not. The same dark curls, the same haunted eyes. But there was something wrong. His skin too pale, his movements too precise, as if he were mimicking life rather than living it. You died, she whispered, voice cracking. You left us. He stepped inside uninvited, and that should have been impossible, but Ethan appeared on the stairs, blinking sleepily. Daddy? Elena's heart shattered. Calder crossed the room and dropped to his knees. I'm so sorry, bud, he whispered. I never wanted to leave you. Ethan hesitated. Then hugged him. Elena couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Something wasn't right. And then Lucienne was in the room. He hadn't knocked. He didn't need to. Calder stood slowly, shielding Ethan behind him. Lucienne's eyes darkened to black. You should not be here. Neither should you, Calder shot back. You're the reason they know. You led them to him. Elena stared between them. What are you talking about? But neither answered her. Lucienne stepped forward, voice like ice. Tell her, Calder. Tell her what you are. Calder's face twisted, not in fear, but in pain. I never lied, he said to Elena. But I didn't tell the whole truth. He rolled up his sleeve. Veins beneath his skin shimmered faintly. Not red. Not blue. Something else entirely, iridescent, unnatural. I'm not like him, Calder said. I was made. Not born. Lucienne's voice dropped. A hybrid. Created in a lab. Experimented on. Abandoned. I escaped, Calder snapped. For her. For Ethan. And now the Covenant knows what you are. And what your son could become. Elena took a step back, trembling. What do you mean, what he could become? Lucienne's voice softened. Ethan isn't just gifted. He's an anomaly. A convergence. Calder stepped toward her, pleading. You can't trust him, Elena. He doesn't care about Ethan, only about what Ethan means. Lucienne's gaze never left Calder's. And you do? Is that why you abandoned them the moment you felt the Covenant stir? The storm raged harder outside. Elena looked down at her son, his small hand in Calder's, his wide eyes on Lucienne. Torn between two monsters who both claimed to love him. But only one had stayed. Only one had bled to protect them. She turned to Calder, her voice low. You have 2 minutes to explain why you came back. And if I don't like your answer, I'll let him decide what happens next. From the shadows, Lucienne smiled, just barely. Because the game had changed. And now the boy had a father. And 2 predators circling the same fire. Episode 9, Bonded by Blood. The morning after Calder's return, Duskwood felt eerily quiet, too still, as though the town was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. Elena didn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table watching Calder sip coffee like he was still human. Lucienne stood near the window, arms crossed, keeping a silent, watchful eye on them both. Ethan played in the living room, stacking his dinosaur figures, unaware that two supernatural forces, one born, the other made, hovered inches from war. Then it happened. A small bird slammed into the glass, falling limp onto the porch. Elena jumped, rushing to the door, Ethan on her heels. "Don't touch it, sweetheart." But it was too late. Ethan knelt beside the bird and gently placed his hands over its tiny, broken frame. He closed his eyes. A warm light pulsed from beneath his fingers, soft, golden, ancient. Elena gasped. Calder stepped forward, stunned. The bird fluttered its wings, chirped, and flew off as if nothing had happened. Lucienne's expression darkened. "That shouldn't be possible." Elena turned to him. "What just happened?" Calder crouched beside Ethan. "It's a gift," he whispered. "I thought it skipped him. I thought." Lucienne interrupted, voice tight. "That's not a hybrid gift. That's something older." Calder stood. "You don't know everything, Lucienne." "But I know enough," he snapped. "A hybrid is science. This is Bloodline." They both turned to Elena. Calder spoke first. "You said you found a letter, right? From me?" She nodded slowly. "It said to keep Ethan hidden. That he's not like you. Or me." Lucienne stepped closer, gazing tense. "Elena, do you know your family's lineage? Beyond your grandmother?" "No. My parents died when I was little. I bounced through foster care. I never looked back." Lucienne's voice dropped to a near whisper. "You need to look back now." He moved to the table and pulled out a folded page from the inner pocket of his coat, a centuries-old parchment inked in blood. On it was a symbol. Elena's eyes widened. It matched the one burned into the chest from the attic. The one in the letter Calder had written. "This is the mark of the first bloodline," Lucienne said. "It belonged to the woman who birthed the vampire race. Before even the Covenant. Your family descends from her." Elena stumbled back. "You think I'm... what? Some vampire queen?" "No," Lucienne said. "Something worse. You're human. But not untouched. You carry the origin. And now Ethan does too." Calder's eyes flicked toward the window. "If the Covenant finds out what he can do." "They already know," Lucienne replied. Silence fell. Heavy. Final. Then, from the hallway, Ethan spoke quietly. "Am I a monster?" Elena rushed to him, pulling him into her arms. "No, baby," she whispered, tears in her throat. "You're not a monster." But as she held him close, her eyes met Lucienne's across the room, and she saw the answer in his face. Ethan wasn't a monster yet. Episode 10, Betrayal Under Moonlight. The moon was high, casting silver shadows through the trees, when Lucienne insisted they leave the house. "They know where you live," he said. "It's only a matter of time before they strike." Elena didn't argue. Ethan had barely slept in days. The glow in his hands came more frequently now, pulsing when he was upset, like a warning light from something ancient waking within him. They fled to a safe house deep in the woods, an old hunting cabin Lucienne claimed hadn't been touched in decades. But it smelled of old blood, and Elena didn't trust it. That night, she awoke to whispers. Not voices, not words, just whispers. As though the trees were remembering. She crept outside, moonlight bathing the forest floor, only to find a figure waiting by the creek. Ambrose. His cloak shimmered like mist, and his grin was a slash of ivory in the dark. "Still dreaming you're just a waitress?" he asked smoothly. "Or have you started to remember?" Elena backed away. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No? Strange. You wear the mark of the First Mother on your soul like a crown." He held up a shard of obsidian. It reflected not her face, but a vision, a woman bathed in fire, fangs bared, giving birth under a red moon. "That blood runs in your veins," he whispered. "You're not just a carrier. You're the key." Suddenly, pain shot through Elena's shoulder, a searing brand flaring to life beneath her skin. She screamed, falling to her knees. Lucienne appeared in an instant, blade drawn. "Ambrose," he growled. "You've gone too far." But Ambrose didn't flinch. "You should have told her, brother. You knew what she was. What Ethan is." Elena staggered upright. "Tell me. Now." Lucienne's blade dropped. His face was pale. Hollow. "You are descended from the First Mother," he said quietly. "The only human whose blood could birth vampires without turning them. She was said to carry the essence of creation, and destruction. And me? You're the last of her living bloodline. Which makes Ethan the first of something entirely new. The forest trembled. Ambrose's voice sharpened. The Covenant wants to spill his blood to harness his power. But I want to awaken it. Suddenly, Lucienne lunged, but Ambrose vanished, his laughter echoing through the trees. Behind them, the cabin exploded into flames. Calder burst from the burning wreckage, Ethan in his arms, coughing. They set a trap, he rasped. This whole place, it was never safe. As they ran from the blaze, Elena looked down at her arm, the mark now fully visible. A crimson sigil pulsing like a second heartbeat. The betrayal had already happened. And the war had already begun. Episode 11, The Burning Mark. Elena hadn't slept in 3 nights. Every time she closed her eyes, the dreams came, violent, vivid, too real to be dreams. She wandered halls made of bone. Heard the cries of women long dead. Saw fire rising from blood-soaked earth. And in every vision, she stood at the center, barefoot and crowned in ash. The mark on her shoulder, once faint, now pulsed visibly beneath her skin, glowing with a deep, infernal red whenever Lucienne or Ethan came near. At times, it burned, searing like it was being carved anew. "You're changing," Lucienne said quietly, as they stood by a cold riverbank. She wanted to scream. Into what? He didn't answer. Not because he didn't know, but because he did. She began losing time. One morning, she came to with dirt under her nails and blood on her hands. Another night, she woke standing outside Ethan's room, whispering a language she didn't understand, her eyes still closed. Lucienne and Calder argued constantly now, about protection, prophecy, power, but Elena heard none of it. Something inside her was stirring, old and angry, and it wanted out. Ethan noticed too. "Mommy, sometimes when I look at you, your face goes funny." Elena knelt beside him. "What do you mean, baby?" He hesitated. "Like, you're not you anymore." Her throat tightened. "Do I scare you?" Ethan thought for a moment. "No. But sometimes it feels like you're listening to something I can't hear." That night, Elena walked alone into the woods, drawn by something older than reason. She found herself standing before a stone circle hidden beneath layers of moss and thyme. The moment she stepped inside it, the wind died. Even the forest went silent. And then, she remembered. Not a moment. A lifetime. She had been here before. In another body. Another age. She had screamed as the first mother was torn apart by her own coven, betrayed for loving a mortal man. Her blood had soaked the stones beneath Elena's feet. Her final curse was cast with her dying breath. "Let my blood return to flesh. Let my fire walk again." The mark on Elena's skin erupted in flame. She fell to her knees, visions flooding her mind, Ambrose kneeling in devotion, Calder fleeing from a laboratory, Lucienne, watching her burn from the shadows, unable to stop it. Elena screamed. When she opened her eyes, the flames were gone, but so was her reflection. She ran, heart thundering, only to find Lucienne waiting for her at the tree line. He reached for her, and flinched. Her touch burned him. "You're becoming her," he whispered. "The first mother is waking. Through you." Elena looked down at her hands, still trembling. A single leaf drifted from a tree and disintegrated before it touched her palm. For the first time, Elena realized. She wasn't just fighting monsters. She might become one. Episode 12, Ethan's Gift. The house was too quiet. Elena stepped into the kitchen, sunlight bleeding across the floorboards, and knew something was wrong. She called Ethan's name once. Twice. No answer. Her pulse slammed into her ears as she ran from room to room. Every toy, every crayon, every tiny sock was still in place, but Ethan was gone. The back door hung open. Within the hour, Lucienne and Calder had torn through the forest, the town, the gravesites, each blaming the other. "You should have been watching him." Calder snarled. "You think this is about you?" Lucienne growled. "This is about the Covenant. And now they have him." Elena stood in the center of it all, shaking, hollow, furious. Then she felt it. A pull. Not physical. Not logical. Instinct. She closed her eyes and let the mark on her skin guide her, not north, not south, but inward, into the quiet, broken places of Duskwood where memories slept. That's where she found it, an old chapel, buried behind decades of ivy and rot, doors broken, stained glass shattered. She remembered this place from her dreams. And inside, blood. A trail of it, leading to the altar. Ethan's toy dinosaur lay in a pool of red, its tiny plastic eyes staring upward. But then, movement. A heartbeat. Elena turned and saw a boy, Ethan, standing silently in the pews, his eyes glowing faint gold. "Elena," he said. "Not mommy. Not mama. Elena, they want to use me." Before she could run to him, something stepped between them. A man. Or what used to be one. "Ambrose. You don't understand what he is," he said, almost gently. "The boy isn't just your son. He's a conduit. A vessel for what was lost. What you were born to unlock." Elena stepped forward. "Let him go. Or I swear." Ambrose smiled. "You don't need to threaten me. You need to choose." Behind him, Calder appeared from the shadows, eyes flashing. "He's right. If you take Ethan now, the Covenant will tear this town apart. But if we wait, if we awaken him under the right conditions, we can control it." Lucienne's voice rang out from the rafters. "You mean control him? Like they controlled you?" The three men stood in a perfect triangle, Lucienne, Calder, and Ambrose, each one demanding something from her. "But Ethan?" Ethan walked toward her, golden light pulsing from his palms. "Mommy," he said softly. "I think I broke something inside me." She knelt, cupping his face. "No, baby. They're just afraid of how strong you are." Tears welled in his eyes. "Am I bad?" "No," she said fiercely. "You're mine." But even as she held him, the mark on her arm began to burn. A choice was coming. And someone wouldn't survive it. Episode 13, The Thorn Prophecy. They returned to the Thorn estate as the storm broke. Lightning fractured the sky over Duskwood, casting violent shadows across the once-forgotten mansion now alive with secrets, wards, and the ghosts of bloodlines past. Ethan lay resting in Elena's arms, feverish and glowing faintly beneath his skin, his body fighting a power it was never meant to contain. Lucienne waited in the drawing room, silent, unmoving. For once, even Calder had no argument left in him. Elena laid Ethan on the couch, turned to Lucienne, and said, "No more riddles. No more history lessons. Tell me everything." Lucienne's eyes were hollow. Older than she'd ever seen them. "There was a prophecy," he said slowly. "Whispered in the courts of old blood. Scrawled on walls deep underground. They called it the Thorn Curse at first. Later, the Thorn Prophecy. A punishment for a love that defied the old order." Elena's voice cracked. "Isadora?" Lucienne nodded. "When she died, something passed into me. A tether. I didn't understand it for centuries. But now, I know." He crossed the room, lifting a time-worn book wrapped in leather and ash. Inside was a sketch, her. Isadora. The resemblance to Elena was undeniable. The prophecy said a woman born of the first blood would rise again. She would bear a child of unmatched power. One who could either rebuild the vampire race, or end it forever. Elena stared at the page. "And you think I'm her?" "I know you are. And I think I was cursed to find you again. To love you again. But only if my heart remembered how to beat." She felt it then, that same painful ache she'd felt the first night he touched her. Not just longing. Recognition. Fate. Calder scoffed. "So what now? You two lock lips and fulfill some ancient bedtime story while our son burns from the inside out?" Lucienne turned slowly. "He's not just your son. And you know it." Silence. Then Calder looked at Elena. "You never asked how I survived. How I got out. The scientists who created me? They didn't just want a hybrid. They wanted a key. And they thought I'd be the one. But when Ethan was born, I saw it wasn't me." His voice cracked. "It was him." Elena backed away, heart pounding. "You were never trying to protect us. You were watching him." "I loved him," Calder insisted. Lucienne stepped between them. "You used him." A sudden gust of wind shattered the stained glass window. From the darkness outside, a dozen eyes blinked open, feral, red, and watching. "The Covenant is here," Lucienne said. Ethan stirred on the couch. "They're calling me." Elena took his hand. "Don't listen." But Ethan's eyes opened, and they were not his own. A woman's voice came from his lips. "The blood returns. The fire awakens." Lucienne paled. The first mother. Lightning struck the estate again, this time splitting the tree and the yard in two. The prophecy wasn't just unfolding. It had already begun. Episode 14, When Blood Boils. The storm outside had turned violent, but it was nothing compared to what swirled inside the Thorn estate. Ethan, possessed, glowing, burning, lay unconscious upstairs, watched over by protective sigils Lucienne scrawled in blood and salt. Calder stood by the fireplace, drenched and shaking, as Elena backed away from him, eyes wide with betrayal. "You knew," she said, her voice raw. You knew what Ethan was. You used me to create him. Calder's jaw twitched. At first. Yes. The silence cracked like thunder. But then I met him, he continued, softer now. I saw his eyes. I saw you holding him. And I wasn't an experiment anymore. I was a father. Lucienne shoved him hard into the stone mantle. Save your lies. You were bred in a lab, Calder. Spliced with vampire DNA and God knows what else. You were never meant to feel anything. Just to serve. I was meant to evolve, Calder snapped. To survive. The walls of the manor trembled as a shrill cry echoed from upstairs. Elena sprinted toward the stairs but stopped when a wave of heat rippled down the banister, too intense to be natural. Lucienne grabbed her wrist. It's not him anymore. It's her. Elena, Calder shouted. You're the only one who can reach him. But not as you are. What are you talking about? He had pulled something from his coat, an obsidian vial, black as night and warm to the touch. This is what they used on me. It unlocks the dormant code. Awaken your bloodline, Elena. Join him. Or lose him. Lucienne's eyes darkened. You'll destroy her. She's destroying herself already, Calder growled. Her mark is spreading. She's slipping into the First Mother's mind. We all feel it. Elena stood frozen between them. Lucienne. Calder. Two broken men born of darkness. Both claiming to protect her. Both hiding truths that threatened to destroy her son. The walls trembled again. Paint blistered, wood cracked. Upstairs, Ethan screamed, and the sigils flared with crimson fire. Then, without warning, Elena moved, toward Calder. She grabbed the vial and held it to the light. Lucienne stepped forward. If you drink that, you won't be human anymore. You won't be you. Elena turned to him, tears sliding down her cheeks. Then maybe I was never meant to be. She uncorked the vial. The liquid shimmered with memories, birth, fire, death, rebirth. And she drank. The change was instant. Her veins lit like molten gold. The mark on her shoulder pulsed and spread across her body like a living tattoo. Her eyes, once soft hazel, flashed a piercing violet as an ancient presence settled into her skin. The First Mother had awakened. Lucienne stepped back in horror. Calder watched in awe. And upstairs, Ethan suddenly stopped screaming. Elena looked up, her voice no longer her own, and yet fully hers. No more hiding. No more running. It ends tonight. Thunder cracked overhead. Outside, dozens of cloaked figures emerged from the trees. The Covenant had arrived. And war was seconds away. Episode 15, His Eternal Heartbeat, Finale. The Thorn Estate was no longer a home. It had become a battleground. Outside, the Covenant closed in, figures in cloaks, their faces painted in ancient runes, eyes gleaming with hunger and purpose. Inside, Elena stood at the top of the staircase, transformed. Her skin shimmered with power. Her voice carried an echo older than time. But she was still Elena. Her heart still beat for one reason, Ethan. He stood behind her now, no longer fevered or possessed. Calm. Watching. Silent. As if some part of him already knew how this would end. Lucienne and Calder stood on opposite sides of the room, both prepared to fight to the death, for her, for Ethan, for very different reasons. Then the doors shattered. The Covenant surged inside like a black wave, silent, coordinated, deadly. They didn't speak. They didn't hesitate. They came for the boy. Elena raised her hand, and the first line of attackers was thrown backward by invisible force. Her power rippled across the room, cracking marble, bending time. But with every surge, her grip on herself slipped. Her eyes flickered between violet and red. Her voice fractured between Elena and her. Lucienne moved beside her. You can't hold this. It's killing you. She turned to him, truly seeing him. Then it kills me. But it doesn't take my son. A second wave of vampires charged. This time, Lucienne fought. He was a blur of shadow and speed, fangs gleaming, blade flashing. Calder joined him, raw, brutal, unrefined. The two of them, enemies in life, united now in one purpose, protecting Elena and Ethan. But the Covenant's leader stepped through the wreckage, Varela, High Priestess of the Blood Sun. Her presence stilled the room. Her voice was low, venomous silk. You are not the First Mother, she told Elena. You're her echo. Her vessel. Nothing more. I'm more than that, Elena whispered. I'm a mother. She raised her hand again. This time, her power didn't lash out, it imploded. She screamed as energy coiled back into her chest, burning through her. Blood poured from her nose. Her knees buckled. Ethan ran to her, placing his small hands on her face. Mommy, stop. You don't have to fight alone. The moment his skin touched hers, the glow exploded outward. Golden. Blinding. Pure. The Covenant staggered. Screamed. Burned. Varela shrieked as her skin cracked like glass. It's not the mother, it's the child. The ancient energy within Ethan surged, but unlike Elena's raw chaos, his was balanced. Calming. Restoring. He wasn't destruction. He was harmony. Lucienne dropped to his knees. Calder did the same. And in that moment, the fighting stopped. Varela reached for Ethan, one last desperate grasp, but Elena, her body broken and shaking, stood. And she whispered, "You will not touch my son." With a final cry, she unleashed all that remained within her, the first mother's fire, centuries of pain, loss, love. And Varela vanished into ash. Silence. Smoke drifted. The estate groaned. Ethan fell into Elena's arms, exhausted but alive. Lucienne crawled toward them, bloodied. He pressed his hand to Elena's cheek. "You came back. I never left," she whispered. And then, his heart beat. Once. Twice. A steady rhythm. She felt it beneath her fingers. Lucienne. Tears welled in his eyes. "It's you. It was always you." Calder stood at a distance, watching the family he'd never truly been part of, but had helped save. And quietly, he turned and walked away. Outside, the sun began to rise over Duskwood for the first time in days. Inside, Elena, no longer fully human, not quite immortal, held her son. Lucienne knelt beside them, his heart beat a fragile, precious thing. But as the light touched Ethan's face, his eyes opened, and glowed faintly gold once more. He smiled at her, and in a voice not entirely his own, said, "This is only the beginning."